Hello, welcome filmmakers. Today we're going to talk all things non-scripted TV, non-scripted air quotes TV with director Steve Abramson, who has directed all kinds of crazy non-scripted things and has great stories. For those of you who just are tuning in, please put your comments and questions in the comments box because we are going to answer your questions. We're here for you. So if you aren't asking questions, I don't know what you want to know. So what do you want to know about non-scripted TV? Put those in the box. Steve, let's start with a little bit of maybe something fun. Like what's a fun story that comes to mind about your non-scripted TV days?
Well, first of all, we're all telling stories, whether it's non-scripted or not. And the non-scripted part is generally false because I've had to write many a non-script for that kind of thing. Let's see. Well, I'd say one of the most fun shows I've done was, it was actually in the category of other, but it was kind of non-scripted. It was a paranormal show that was on Fox and then syndicated called Sightings. This was like in the late 90s-ish. And we got to go out and do recreations with real people. That's the reality part of it. Real people who had fantastic stories, like getting abducted by an alien while they were in bed and taken to a ship and all that. So the fun part of that for me as a director was with a small crew to kind of recreate that. I'm looking down at you, I should be looking up here, but to be able to recreate that on a dime and with lighting and just angles and shadows and that kind of thing. And that was a fun thing to do. And then to bring it back and have the editors go, how the F did you do that? I don't know if I can curse, but how the F did you do that? That was fun for me. I mean, also things like, I did a show called the Disney Teacher Awards, and we had to go out all over the country and do profiles of teachers from all grade levels.
I love that.
Yeah, and it was a real, for Disney, it wasn't intended to be a money-making thing. It was meant to be a kind of service thing. Actually, it was Michael Eisner's baby when he was in charge. And wow, that was eye-opening. Not only are there great teachers all over the country, but it was really fun to tell their stories. Basically, one day to scout, go to the classroom, hang out, take notes, no crew. Next day, shoot the whole thing. And probably like an 8 to 12 hour day, just depended, always looking not to go overtime, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But one thing I kind of took a note from all the movies I've watched and subscribing to American Cinematographer, which I would suggest anybody do because you can learn a lot about movie making from the technical angle, is from shots I've seen in movies, how can I recreate that without all the equipment? So we have a cart, to roll equipment around, that kind of thing. And I found this big ballroom, like a dancing type ballroom. And I had a teacher. And I put her at one end of the cart, and I was leaning on the other end of the cart with the shooter, over his shoulder. And I had I had like one PA, and he rolled the cart around this big circular oval shaped dance floor slowly. And when we got to the beginning, he would just keep going. So what the shot was, is you're watching this person answer questions and looking kind of just off camera. And the whole background is moving the entire time. And it's like, it just looked amazing. And it certainly added interest to the shot. That's one of those examples of bringing something back to an editor. And they went, what, how did you do that? And I'm thinking, well, it's kind of like, getting in a shopping cart, have someone push you with a camera, that kind of thing.
So I mean, we have to. Would you say that when it comes to doing non-scripted like that, is it harder trying to get a good interview from sort of non-talent, or is it harder trying to create those interesting shots on the limited budget that non-scripted has?
Well, that's a great question. The shot part is just my trying to be creative. Okay, the interview, it doesn't matter if they're a celebrity or they're a civilian. It is tough. Interviewing looks easy, and some interviews can really be crap. Depending on the interviewer more than the interviewee. So there's a real skill to being able to interview. And there are different types of interviews too. For an interview show, like a Dr. Phil that I worked on for years, the interview is sort of the spine of the whole piece because you go back to that kind of thing. But it's very specific what we want to impart in terms of what the story is. So we have questions in mind, and we do our best to try to get those questions. And a long form interview, it's like I did for the TV Academy, these archive interviews. I don't have to get them to say things. They can say anything they want, and they don't have to have a complete sentence because I'm mic'd, and people who watch can hear the question. That's not usually true with most TV shows. But on a show that you only have a limited amount of time to kind of meet the civilian guests that you're interviewing, while the crew's setting up, I get my first shot and say, can you go like this, do this in this corner of the house, wherever it is, outdoors. And then I spend that time trying to warm up the guest, basically, and try to take away any fears they have, because they always have fears, which are, I'm going to look stupid. Somebody in my neighborhood is going to make fun of me. I have nothing to say. And I always say, everybody has a story. I don't care who you are. Everybody has a story. And my job is just to help you tell your story and try to, make those fears go away. So once they get into a comfort zone, it's much easier to do the question. Also,
are there tips you can give for people who are trying to get into non-scripted, or they're going to be doing their first interviews? Are there tips on ways that you would get the guest comfortable?
Yeah, first of all, before the camera rolls, I said the part about everyone has a story, but make them feel comfortable. Tell them that what your goal is. Bring them in on what the magic is in terms of what your goals are. Don't make it a secret, because the less they know, the more kind of freaked out they get. So that's just a general tip.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, and I have kind of a spiel I give, but it's some of it's technical, but I do that on the fly sometimes. Like if I'm just off camera, unless there's something they're specifically looking at the camera, which is not usually the case. I say, while they're talking, if they start to look at the camera, I just go, I'm off camera. I go, I kind of point to me, or I go like that, and they kind of get it. They start looking at me, that kind of thing. But it's also it's how you ask a question. There are questions that can be confrontational and can be kind of combative, and there are questions that it feels like more of a collaboration. And if you had a long day and you're tired, find a way to be pumped up, because basically an interview subject will reflect what energy you give them. So if I said to you, so Jen, I'm falling asleep or something. I have fallen asleep during an interview, but I'm not totally, but I've closed my eyes because it's either it's too hot in the room or I'm so bored. And it's like, did they see me? Of course they saw me, but they generally don't say anything. But the point is, it's like if I say, so Jen, I'm mumbling, so Jen, so what do you do when you're not at home? Do you work? Or, just some monotone crap,
Yeah.
And it's like, so Jen, like, what do you do? What's your job? I mean, do you have fun doing it? Tell me,
Yeah.
tell me
the
what's cool about it.
It's almost like you're excited to know about me, and that makes me want to talk to you more. Absolutely.
And also, don't lean back in the chair and go, no. Sit forward. If you sit up, they are energized. Those are just little tricks that are like body language tricks, and the way you, the way you speak, basically.
I also noticed that when I do the interviews, I I try to remember to have a smile on my face.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our resting face looks like we're bored.
Yeah.
So I have a conscious, like, yes, smile and nod kind of
Right.
situation I do when I'm doing interviews.
That's key. And what you said, it's funny because sometimes we are bored, but it's like that makes us performers. And
Yeah.
that's another thing. As far as actors go, they're trained and they're amazing. But people are actors too, and they don't even realize it. I'm feeling really awkward because I'm looking at the screen, but I really should be looking at that. I should look. Am I looking all over? Anyway, we are performing, and the civilians perform because someone could be totally different behind closed doors as they are when they're out in public. So we all perform to a degree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to get them at their best.
Harpreet, I'm gonna get to your question in 1 second. I want to go on, keep going with the interviewing people question, because this is such a big part of what most people do when it comes to non-scripted is interviewing people, getting some story out.
Right.
So whenever I do interview type situations of any kind of project, I try to keep the interviews 30 minutes max for the person. I try to keep our day short if I can, like a 4-hour day, because I don't think people understand how exhausting it is on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can speak about both lengths of interviews. A news interview, when I directed news in 3 markets. I started in local TV, so I was in Norfolk, Virginia, Louisville, and then LA. And it's amazing how great news people are when they go out in the field. They ask 6 questions, 8 questions, boom, 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 boom. And now sometimes they're one man, woman bands. They have to go out and shoot it sometimes, depending on the market. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. But yeah, it's done efficiently. It's done quickly. Forget a half hour. It's 5 minutes, and they get what they need. Come back with an editor, sit with them, cut it, and it's ready for air. It's phenomenal. Then, and I'm just going to go ahead and use Dr. Phil show as an example. When I first started on it, I was there at the beginning. We wrote what we kind of called dream scripts. They were like what the script would be in a script, because we let the people tell the story. It's not there are in sightings. We actually had voiceover in between the sound bites that kind of set up what we were trying to do and whatever But in the Dr. Phil world, we let the people tell their story. But to get there, you have to ask the right questions. So it was very efficient at the beginning, and somewhere along the line, it got longer and longer and longer. There was this whole sort of, fear of, if I miss one thing, I'm going to get yelled at. It was just kind of a pressure. And so literally, I have done 100 questions in one interview. Wow. And we're sitting at midnight with like a teenager doing, and yes, everyone's exhausted and it's unnecessary. But yeah, I'm a fan of keeping it as brief as you can and getting what you need. But yeah.
When you and this will also lead into actually, let's do Harpreet's question, then I'll ask that follow-up question. So Harpreet asks, for non-scripted videos, you just show up with your camera truck and ask, okay, what are we going to shoot today?
You asked me, is that how it's done, or you're just okay? I'll try to keep my answers shorter too. I realize you're going to cut this up too. Yeah, I do homework. That's all. I have a book, a notebook, do my homework before I arrive. I highlight things, the names of the people. I go in there and I want to know the names of my crew and the names of the people I'm interviewing before I even step in the door. And then I call them by their names. People like to be called by their names. When I'm driving to the airport afterwards, it's like my mind is erased. I can't even remember the names of the people I talk to, but it's key to know who you're with. It gives them importance to say their name. But yeah, I have a plan. So I have a plan, and it has to be efficient. And as soon as we roll in, I'm talking to the usually on the phone with the crew, which often is 3 people. It's like a shooter, sound, and maybe if you're lucky, a PA or something like that for small shoots. And I try to call them a day ahead. Some people don't, just to say, hey, I'm and I always say, this is not going to be necessarily a tough shoot, but let's try to have fun. let's try to have fun if it's possible. Let's try to, you know, um, to realize. I mean, I don't go into a big speech about it, but I feel, whether I'm doing scripted, which I'm not, I always kind of wanted to do, drama, 1 hour drama, but, working in sort of reality and talk show and the kind of things that I do that are very quick. Um, I feel lucky anyway. I don't care. I'm really grateful. I mean, how many people get to do that at all? So yeah, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. Have a plan. I have my questions, everything highlighted. I'm very efficient with my notebook.
Do you go in and go, I know exactly how I want this lit, where I'm going to put them in the shot, what B-roll I want, or do you start figuring that out as you get there?
No, if I figured it out when I was there, I'd be 3 days shooting 3 days. I have a B-roll list. I have I have an idea of what I want to get in terms of in terms of the interviews shot. That's something I scout instantly as soon as I get there. We look around with the shooter, looking at places. Sometimes it's a mess. I mean, a dump, and you have to figure out a way to hide stuff. Because it's like, a shot like you, it might be 2 people in the shot or just one, but just try to find a background or make a background. And it's hard to not be use the same kind of backgrounds. Like there's a lamp in the back and boring, but if you can make it interesting, right. But my goal is from the time I get there, I want to be rolling 1 hour later, no more than one
Nice.
hour later. Sometimes the sheet they have back at wherever the production office is, they have a half hour because a lot of people who are like preparing it and pre-interviewing have never been in the field. So they don't have a clue of how to do it. So I've been screwed many times by that. And you have to be able to figure out places to take shortcuts. But yeah, have a plan. I find a place quickly. The shooters do this all the time, so they kind of know what to look for. There are times when I go, "Can you find a place for me?" I have to go talk to the guest, that kind of thing. But B-roll, yeah, I have a list exactly what I need for the B-roll. It can vary a little bit. There are things that can drop off there, and some things are generic, like walking. So I know the shots. You have them. Your back pedal. You're behind them. I like to shoot low, and this is just a simple thing. I like to get down where I'm shooting their feet walking and things like that. I mean, and I don't usually do it, but I mean, a camera guy, sometimes he has a camera like it's glued to his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So his angle is looking down at his feet, or a dog playing with a kid in a yard. And it's like, no. So I've actually, kind of with his permission or her permission, take the camera myself and get down and hold it down at ground level to get shots. Simple, simple, simple. But it looks way better. You can imagine, or go through grass where the camera lens is parting the grass. Yeah, I'm always looking for creative ways to shoot B-roll because when you do a show a long time, it's like, and the editors are, I mean, yeah, I
was going to say, it sounds like you definitely try to be creative and unique. We had Jason Satterland on once where he said when he would do these sort of corporate gigs, they could be boring, but he would go, this is my mini movie within my big movie. Like this is my DNA movie in Jurassic Park. So he would find interesting ways to shoot that, which actually got him more work because he was being so creative. And I think that's really something that filmmakers don't think about because they think, oh, I just need the talking head shot and some B-roll. And I like that you're pointing out, no, be creative.
And also, if you are a fan of movies, and I would think most directors are, or anything you see, visual, TV, streaming, whatever, steal from something that inspires you. I mean, there's a famous shot in Jaws where I forgot the actor's name, but he's sitting on the beach and and I always get mixed up whether it's like the dolly is being pushed forward and the camera lens is being zoomed back, or the opposite. It's the zooming in and then pulling it. You know what I mean? It's where the thing is like the background goes like that.
Yeah.
And the face is steady. It's steady. I've done that on shots of just for B-roll of people because it's just a fun shot. And yeah.
Actually, that's a really good point. That like when filmmakers, especially with the working director, a lot of our directors, you guys are all working to get any kind of directing gig. And those directing gigs tend to be non-scripted. They tend to be interviews and such. Interviews, B-roll. Why not use that time to learn to be a better filmmaker? You love like Steve says, you love a shot in a movie. Here's your chance to try it in a less, I don't know, stressful situation, in a less pressure situation, and find things that you like. That is
Absolutely.
so clever. I love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. And also today with so many ways to shoot, I mean, if you want to do a small scene or something that's not you're being hired to do, oh my God, there's so many ways. There's so many cameras out there like that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a movie has been shot on an iPhone before, and you can experiment. The qualities every time they put one out is better. You know, that kind of thing. And people are editing at home. You know, Final Cut Pro and all that kind of thing. So it's way more accessible than it used to be when you had to shoot an actual like a film or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So the opportunity is just like social media. Everyone can have a platform. My son who streams, you know, anyone can stream. It doesn't mean necessarily you're going to have followers, but you just get a microphone, a cheap microphone, not this one, and a camera, and walk around and whatever you want to do. But you can try it. It was all shut off earlier, years ago when I started, that kind of thing.
So,
Yeah.
everybody who is watching, we have a few minutes left. If you have questions, I'd love you to get them in. Harpreet, thank you for the great questions and the great feedback. He says this is all really helpful, and he thanks you. Okay, so non-scripted. So we've talked about sort of how to help get interview subjects to relax. We talked about B-roll. Shatnoff just popped in. I'll see what David says. I'm a producer that will have the opportunity to direct a couple of episodes of nonfiction travel series I'm producing. Aside from the incredible insight you've already provided, is there anything else you would impart on a first-time non-scripted director? Which is a great question, because I was literally going to say, what are we missing? What's that key element that
I feel like we've been
non-scripted
talking for
directors can do?
5 minutes. So, but yeah, travel shows are amazing because you're outdoors a lot, and there's amazing stuff to shoot. So just shoot the hell out of it. I mean, and get that at the least, because the beauty of it, and now drones are being
I was
used
going to say
commonly.
drones
Oh
make
my
it so,
God!
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, drones make it look like you're making a $50 million feature film, and all you do is hire a drone operator, and they are good. They are expert. And you get a shot. I mean, I did House Hunters International, and they added drones. So now when they have a home that they're looking at, you got the drone shot over. It's just incredible. But yeah, so for travel, I mean, it's almost like a no-brainer. You can spend a lot of time doing it, but yeah, just look around you. Look around you if you don't have specific shots. The interview is just one piece of it. It's important because you want people to talk about things, but then you got to fill it out. And sometimes you do little recreations too. There's a bit of reality that's not things that just don't happen, like The Bachelor, let's say. I mean, yes, they're real people. That's kind of sometimes the only real part. But there's a scene where there's a woman and a man sitting on a bench, and they're talking and flirting, and maybe they'll make out, whatever. And then all of a sudden, another guy walks in and says, "Can I borrow Sue?" Well, that's not spontaneous. It's a producer right at the side going, "Okay, ready, go." You know, um, so that's the reality of reality TV, is that they're real people, and that's kind of it. Or else you're not going to have a TV show. It's going to be boring. But the travel shows, it's a great show to do. I've done them where, yeah, there's so much to see. You know, when I do B-roll with people, I try to do it outdoors of a building because it's just so much better. It just looks so much better.
When
Yeah.
you're shooting, and travel is actually a good sample, because it's very it's, I don't say basic, but it's like the basic, like you get your B-roll, you have your talking head, right?
Yeah.
Typically. How do you plan your story for that? So like, is that something that the producers have decided ahead of time, the story they want to tell? If something happens in the interview, how often are you switching with the story as you're telling?
Okay. Another great question. So many answers, but I'll try to be as brief as I can. Depending on what the show is. Let's say it's a cooking show, like where the host goes around to a different culture and tries different foods and that kind of thing. So there's the story you're telling kind of tells itself instead of what you want to kind of script out. They're like story beats, really. But if they're narrated, somebody writes a script, whether it's the host or someone writes for the host. But basically, well, if we're in, let's say, Bangkok, we want to see a little bit of the culture of Bangkok just with B-roll shots, just to get a flavor. And things used to be slower in terms of how you move, and a lot of times they're kind of, I call MTV Fast. MTV kind of introduced a real kind of thing, and especially with music. And sometimes I want to see it perform. Anyway, back to something like a cooking show. You want to set the stage quickly, and then you get into where your host is interacting, that kind of thing. If it's a show like I did shows for Animal Planet, where I had to do 2 segments a day, everything from like the dog, the dogs they trained to be able to help people, service dogs, and then in the morning I was doing something about crocodiles, and you have to really get in there, and nothing's less boring than animals, that kind of thing. I mean, it's like, how can you go wrong? Because animals are, I mean, you can't direct them, but you can cover them. Another thing about reality and unscripted is you often shoot a hell of a lot more because you don't get what you need sometimes, just like action, cut. So editors who do reality are really, really good because they can look through hours of material. A show like Survivor, some of those really high-end reality shows, they shoot a lot of footage, and it's done beautifully. The production values were pretty amazing on those shows. Yeah, so it depends, but yeah, it's just like what you go out knowing what you want to get, and that helps to solve the problems. It's just doing it in a short amount of time. I've shadowed on a bunch of drama shows. I never got to direct one, but shows back in the 90s like ER and NYPD Blue and stuff like that. And the producer, the director of an ER episode, Chris Chulak, I had a meeting with him after being on set for about 8 days, and I got to meet George Clooney and all of them. George Clooney is a big, by the way, prankster. He spitballs and throws them at the camera, all that. Anyway, so I'm sitting with, and I'm telling him, he said, so what do you do? What do you do? And I explained one day shooting kind of unscripted. And when I was describing, going out and meeting people the first time, often meeting a crew I've never met, having 3 people, getting all this stuff, getting a 7-minute segment in like 12 hours, he was jaw, it was like he was shocked, and I've always believed if you start out in reality and move to scripted, you're much better equipped, because if you can work fast, then it's easy enough to slow down. And like feature, when Quentin Tarantino did an episode of the ER, he had a bad time because it was an 8-hour shoot, 8-day shoot, and he's used to doing features where you take a lot more time. So it was a struggle for everyone, crew, him, actors, everybody. But that, to me, just proves that if you are used to working with a lot of time, it's hard to speed it up even to do an episode of something, I feel
And
like
the
I'm
crazy thing is,
digressing.
non-scripted is as crazy as the hours, the pace, it actually gets paid so much less.
Yeah,
Which is
that's been a frustration. I mean, I feel like I'm paid well, but nothing like, I mean, to me, it'd be a dream. I directed a kind of a stage version of a comedy for kind of working it out kind of a thing. But I love working with actors, and I wish I had a lot more experience doing it because, there's so many good ones and great ones in LA, especially, who aren't even working much. That's another fact about acting.
I do feel like because besides podcast interviewing, like I've done a lot of interview shoots for clients.
Yeah, right.
And I do feel like if you can work with normal people, quote unquote normal, like not actors, and get them comfortable,
civilians,
and
I call them.
energetic, it's only honing your skills for directing actors.
Absolutely.
Just another benefit.
Absolutely, because they come prepared, and we don't have to get into how to direct actors. But there's so much you can take from it. And I'm not sure if your audience is already directing. I assume a lot of them are.
I think most of them
And
have at least directed a couple shorts.
yeah, and a lot of aspiring directors, but um, you have to stand out. Everyone kind of knows that, but you really, if you didn't, you have to stand out in whatever way it is you can. For me, it's I'm meticulous, maybe too much sometimes because I don't want it to take time to do things. But you know, uh, to go on the fly, that's not something you want to do if you're doing kind of fast paced directing. You have to think on your feet. I mean, if you're doing a feature, great. You got time to do things, work it out. A lot of pressure, but there's way more time for the director to work out what he or she is doing. Yeah. So it's the first thing I really directed was a newscast at a TV station, and I won't even tell you what the weekly salary was, but it was hardly anything, and I felt like I would have paid them because it was like an education at this station because it's non-union. I could edit and learn all kinds of things. But I came in as a camera person, a studio camera person, and 7 months later I was directing the weekend news. And when I saw someone directing, I freaked out because if you've ever been in a booth for a news show, it's like the Wild West. It's like crazy. It's like um, any live event too, like an award show. It's chaos. And then what you see on TV is just smooth as a bell. And these are great directors who do like the Oscars and things like that. There's always a pool of about 5 directors who do everything. Glenn Weiss is one of the most well-known who's done the Oscars recently. Such a talented guy. And it's smooth. It's such an operation. Yeah, but thinking on your feet. But when I finally did the news, I was able to do it. I could multitask, and bring everything you have to the table and really want to do it. I mean, if you love doing it, passion really will get you far when people see that. They see it. So, there are directors who are successful who are grumpy and had a bad mood or abusive to crews, but I've always felt they don't work as much as the ones that, I mean, I've heard it a lot now. There are a lot of people in power who will hire a director or anybody, a crew, even an actor, and go, we have a no asshole policy here. I've always believed that. I've not always been able to be the one who can say that.
It's sad that we have to say it, but
yeah. But I like the way you use the word kick ass because it's like, it's like a positive thing because sometimes the job is about kicking your own ass to get things done too,
Everybody who's tuned in, this is the last chance to get your questions in. We have one from David. He says, any tips on working with hosts and getting them focused when you're on location?
Oh, great question. Well, the host kind of knows the deal before they arrive. I mean, they know what the show is typically. You're not having to really tell them a lot of stuff. But what I tell hosts who are any different levels of fame, okay, really, like Dr. Phil is pretty famous. And then there are a slew of shows, travel shows, HGTV shows that some people wouldn't know anything. But all the hosts are kind of empowered by they're kind of the star of the show. One thing I try to tell them, because if you're a director that's new to them, which can often be the case, they have a lot that they're thinking about that can make it difficult for them, for you, for everybody. So what I try to do to empower a host or a star or whoever it is that's kind of the focus of leading us through the show is I come up. And by the way, when I have conversations, I try to keep them private. I don't do them, I don't announce
Pull the
it.
host aside.
Yeah. And I tell them what my job is. My job is to tell the story and also to do anything it takes to make this easy for you. Okay, I'm here to support you. I let them know that right up front because they love hearing that, and it's honest too. I don't like to lie about things. I try to, if I have something, I don't want to talk about, I just won't talk about it. but yeah, I try to empower the host and make them feel like they can lean on me, they can talk to me, they can trust me, and I'm there for them. Um, Not in a way that's like egotistical, just to help them get through the show because they've got a lot on them too. I mean, Dr. Phil, people don't know that he's shy. You can't even believe it. But I learned how to work with him early on because he can be very intimidating to a lot of people. And but to me, intimidation is like a play. It's like a move you do to, if someone, you can't intimidate them, you move around and get the next person. And I kind of understood that right away that, it's just him, but I work really well with him because I kind of learned early on, if I can help him, that's going to serve me too, So I try to read people, and I don't try to make it about me, me. I try to make it about serving whatever it is the project it is. So for him, I'll ask him, at first it's almost like you feel like you have to beg, but you don't. It's like if I can think of something that will help, that's simple and quick, I'll say it, I'll say it. And he got to trust me. And I did a lot of shoots with him to where from the beginning it was like, hey, do you think is it okay if you do to he would say, what do you need, Steve? I mean, that's like amazing to me. And I go, well, I need you to, if you could just do this real setup here. And I give him a blue card with like 5 words on it. Doesn't want anything written out, but he's good. He's a first take guy. And he says, well, I have to get in there. We have to do this. I said, oh, no problem. See, I already have the camera rolling when the car drives up that he gets out of. There's no blah, 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 blah. Let's futz with this, put the tape in. No. I'm rolling. Back then, before it was even, to a cart or a cartridge or something digital, it was, tape. So I'm rolling and prepared. And I go, well, I'm rolling right now. It'll take you, 30 seconds. And he goes, oh, okay, Steve. And then he does it. And it's like, I helped him. If he mispronounces a word, I don't say, you mispronounced that. I say, it might be this. I think I've heard it this way. Do you mind just doing it by saying it both ways? And that way we have it just in case. I know it's wrong, but I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm going to just say, I'm not the smartest one in the room, but I think it's said this way. And then, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not confrontational. So
yeah, there's 2 things I want to point to the audience who is watching and listening. One is that you mentioned you're there to be of service, and you let them know that. Anytime you have directors, I'm telling you, if you have and producers, Dave, when you're on set, if you have imposter syndrome or anything that's making you feel like the pressure, take that pressure off instantly by putting it on the service. How am I serving this production? How can I serve my actors, my hosts, my guests, whoever it is? That is so important. And 2, when he talks about when Steve mentioned the thing about hosts and go and talking to them saying, I'm here for you. I do that with my actors on set too. I think it's always important to make everybody feel comfortable and know you're there for them. And it's going to take a lot of pressure off. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but you've given us such great information. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are maybe watching a replay or didn't get your questions answered, please put them in the comments still. And Steve and I will get in there and give answers and thoughts and keep the conversation going.
Thanks, Janet. And be kind to your crew too.
Yeah.
Be kind to your crew.
Always, especially when you're doing these tiny non-scripted shows where it's like 3 of you and it's exhausting. I've bought many lunches and breakfasts on my own dime that were not production funds. So
this is a ball. I could talk all day. I talk a lot, but you're creative and you're smart. It's really a joy to talk to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody who watched. Thanks, guys, for your great questions.
Okay. Bye.